Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning, Chavra.
Otazoi. Here we go. Someone is alive. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's three prakim. Rambam, Hilchos, Tumas, Eichalen, Prakim, Zayin, Ches, and Tes, beginning with Perek Zayin. Now we're going to start to learn the din of a nitzoik. A nitzoik is a column of liquid, right, being poured from one keli to another. What's the status of that column? Meaning, is the column considered part of that which came above it? If there's tumah in the lower keli, does the nitzoik become tamei? Does the contents of the keli above become tamei? Actually, as we learned in the previous series, that once liquids become tamei, midrabanan, they always become tamei on a level of adishain, and they are metame kelim, especially here that they're going to be the upper keli, right? The liquid, if it becomes tamei, is tamei inside the keli. All of it will become it or not. Similarly, what's going to be the law by a katafres? A katafres is when you have a very deep incline and water is pouring down. Same question, is the water on the top and the water on the bottom, is it considered one water or not? And ashbeid, and obviously we have a gathering of water there, for sure the water is considered one entity. If a source of tumah touches any part of it, all of it becomes tamei. Let's begin. Perek Shvi has 9 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Zakta Rambam, hanitzoik einoi chibur. This nitzoik, this column of liquid, right, that's being poured from one keli into another, is not considered joined. Loyla tumah v'loyla taram. Ketzad, for example, you're pouring mashkin. The mashkin is tahor. It's going into a keli that's tamei. If a keli is tamei, it is metame the liquids. Better, even if you have a column of liquid being poured from a tahor keli, mamish, directly on top of a sheretz. Sheretz is an av, right? We don't say that just like the water that's touching the sheretz indeed becomes tamei. Well, so does all the water in the nitzoik, maybe all the water in the keli above. We don't say that. What do we say? Nitzoik remains tahor. And therefore, if someone is going to chop some of the liquid that's being poured from mid-ear, right? What you grab, what you took, what you gathered is started, because the tumah doesn't go up. That the liquids in the upper keli remain to hide. However, only this is not the type of liquid. This is the temperature of the liquid, cold into cold, or even hot. The upper one is hot, the lower one is hot. Or avada, if the upper one is hot and the bottom one is cold, we say regarding tuma that nitzoik einoi chibur. However, abol hama'ora mashkin tohidin. If the water is coming from a cold keli, the waters are tzoinen, but it's going into mashkin tameim chamin. And as you can just imagine, when cold is being poured into hot, it causes for a lot of steam to come up. There we say hadiyad nitzik chibur and nitmu hamashkin hadzoinen kulan shehuma ora mehen. Not only is the nitzoik tamei, guys, but the liquids from where it's coming is tamei as well, and therefore and now the keli itself, the upper keli, also becomes tamei. As we learned that when mashkin become tameim, it always midrabanan at least becomes tamei on a level of a rishon, and then mashkin that are a rishon have the power midrabanan to be metame keli on the level of a sheni. Why? Says the Rambam, Prema Omru Hama'ara Mashkin Soinen. Lachamen is considered the chibur Ashan Hachamen, because the vapor, the smoke, the steam of the hot lower keli, hot lower contents. Oil ketim reis ashan, and goes up like a pillar of smoke. Not only does it mix into the column, but even ubamayim shebekli ha'elyoin and umetame hakli. And therefore, it's going to be matam in the keli. like we mentioned, the mashkin of the keli ha'elyon will be matam of the keli. Sheha'oshen oila min hachamin is mashkin uchashiv. In other words, vapor itself, vapor is mamish tefeach almanas latfiach. It's not just moist. If you put your hands in vapor, your hands get wet. Your hands get so wet that you can touch something else and make something else wet. So that's like a mashkin. Stam lochoyer, like oibazoi. Why does the Rambam have to write in the beginning that the mashkin become tummy and the keli becomes tummy because of the mashkin? I get that. What about the vapors themselves? Maybe even if you know the vapor didn't touch the keli, still the keli becomes tummy. Many times the vapors themselves will go all the way up. Now, halacha gimel lefik isha shoyed to hoydos. However, all right, she's steering with your hands, not directly in. Maybe you do it now. You have a spoon. Your hands are tired, but the contents of the pots are tummy, and your hands came so close to the contents of the pot that if the liquid of the pot, which is tummy, collected on her hands, as we just mentioned, because the vapors themselves are considered mashkin. Now, guys, don't forget, there are only 7 mashkin that could become tamei, that can be matame. So we've got water. Say that. Okay, halacha, in the middle of gimel, but the opposite direction. Her hands are tameyos, and the higisa bakteira, she's steering a pot. So we say nitma kol masha b'kededam ki'ilu nagaba mashke sheb'kededam. That's a big thing. In other words, we're saying that nitzoik is not a chibur. Vapor is a chibur. Now, what is hands when we speak about Yudel Tameas? Also to remember, Yudel means shniyos. Doesn't matter. If shniyos touches mashkin, touches the kedera, midrabanan, it becomes a rishon and a chanam. That's it. And now the keli also becomes tamei. The Rambam doesn't have to say it, it's self-understood. Halacha dal. Now an exception. A nechil means honey that's being poured. What type of honey? Devash either from a place called Zifim or devash from Tzapachas. That was a very thick honey. See, that's already not called a liquid. That's already called ki'ilu a salad. It's like one gush. So here we say anitzak lem chibur, and that's nothing to do with heat. Now the words are why? Because because they have a rir, whatever rir means. They remain attached, but the rir is some sort of substance that's called the rir, and therefore the hareihem nemshachim kadevek, they connect one to the other like glue, which means that if you take a touch some over here, you move your hand away, a lot will go with your hand, and therefore it's considered to be one gush. And if you touch any part of it, all of it was considered to have direct contact. And therefore, right now that we said that the vash is connected, let me correct myself, not because it's thick, not because it's thick, because it has rir. Wants to contrast this with other foods that might have thickness, but they don't have this rir. It's something, it's a substance that's in it. And even if they're very ovim, it's not about the thickness. For example, he's saying, cook roads, grisen. What do we call this? We call this today hot cereal that you give to kids, or give to adults.
Oatmeal.
Oatmeal, thank you. Because if you stick your hand on it, it's like a very thick, you're not going to have like a whole Kabbalah spun when you move your hand away. There won't be a lot of stuff going up. It separates easy. It doesn't adhere to each other. Or the hachelev, hamutach, melted fat. These are all items that are very thick, but they don't have rir. Other than this, and by the way, not every honey, only honey from zifin and tzapachas. As we just explained, because of the vapor. It's two-way street. What he explains that are coming miklei Evan. He wants to make the point that the keli doesn't become tummy. Now we learned that mayim is the exception. Once mayim has hashaka, the mayim becomes tohirim. We don't say all of the waters. No, it means that you don't have to have all of the waters submerged under the mikvah, but all of the waters have to be on the mikvah, that around all of the waters, mitzad echad at least, not on the top, but on the sides, like we mentioned. If you can just imagine a cup that you are taking under the water, even though we learned before that Rambam spoke about the waters going over, we already mentioned the words of the Rambam doesn't mean over. So when I put this under the mikvah, if this cup is filled until the rim with mayim, there is that first point where the mayim of all of the rim is going to touch the mayim of the mikvah. The moment that happened, that's called hashaka. You can take it back up in the mayim artoid. If nitzoik would have been a chibur letara, you would have argued maybe if some of it is touching the water, all of it becomes tar. We don't say that. We're consistent.
In general, when you touch one part of it, the whole thing becomes tar.
We're saying if it's in an ashboiden, yes. If it's in a cup, if it's in a gathered place, yes. If it's in a column, no. That's what we're learning. And not only that, now we're gonna learn about the nitzoik. Nitzoik einoi chibur lotuma. The next step before ashboiden is called a katafres. Whenever you're gonna learn hilchos mikvos, you're gonna have this word. Katafres means if you have a deep incline, and let's say it's raining hard, so you have water pouring down. You can ask the same kasha. The water is water. Maybe if you touch one end, the other end. So that's right. That we're middle of halacha hey, the chena katafres, right? Yesh olav mashka, and it's mashka tefeach. You don't have to imagine a storm, but even if there's enough liquid that if you touch it, your hand becomes moist enough to make something else moist. There's some water running down this incline. But don't think water. No, water is considered one gush. When? Yes. Ashboiden doesn't mean in a kosher mikvah necessarily. Ashboiden means water that's collected. Water that's collected, here you say that if you touch any part, all of it becomes tamei. Halacha vav. You have this large kneading trough. Shehi katafres, that in itself, the keli is on a incline. The olel mashkatei feyach, and you have moisture on it. Now listen to what's going on over here. The sholish chatichos oicholen tameim. All of them together, only all of them together amount to the shear of a kabetza. But since it's on a katafres, you understand? So you can say one is under the other. Now, they're not rolling down. I get that. But you know what? The liquid underneath them, there's liquid underneath all three of them. Not different little puddles. It's like one puddle. So what will be the havamina? Yechapetz kavaldik. That maybe the liquids are, if the liquids would have been considered one entity, then maybe the liquid should be machaber one piece to the other. And now you have yourself a kabetza. We don't say that. Einon mitzdarfis. And by the way, I know that mashkin, like the Rambam says, acquires tuma b'chol shein, and it imparts b'chol shein. But oichlin, temeim, even to mashkin, can only be metama mashkin if you have the size of a kabetza. Point there is that even the liquids don't become tamei. Even though there is the same liquid is under all three, but they're on an incline. If the liquids are moving, the liquids don't become tamei. You know what? That's only when you have three. Now, if you have two little chatichos, guys, the next chap is two means dovi, that the water that's in between the two, from one side is touching one half of the kabetza, and from the other side of that water. So the water is touching a kabetza at the same time from each side. Then it's mitzdaref. Not because the mayim is considered one gush, but because it's touching a kabetza at the same time. It doesn't have to be in one place, the kabetza. That's the pshat of shtaim. Harei shtaim, harei lo mitzdaref. Very good. But because it's touching, it's touching a kabetza. And that's, by the way, by me also. That means if I have two half of beitzim, two half that are tameim, and I'm touching both, I become tamei. Because I'm touching a kabetza. But the moment the water underneath them are stationary, that's called ashboiden. even when you have an incline, depends how inclined. Sometimes when it's very little water, the gush of oichel is stopping the water from flowing. If the water is not flowing, afilu ke'ein achardel, I don't care how little the pieces of food are. The din will be they're mitzdaref, because the ashboiden is one thing. The ashboiden at that time is touching a total of a kazayis. Great. The whole day, all the three prakim are like this today. A lot of prakim. Allah is like, we have to go quick because it's if we're next. Yeah, shetful yoim. Oh, guys, we're beginning something that will continue in the next chapter. What is the Rambam saying? Etful yoim is someone who already went to the mikvah. As far as chulin is concerned, they're tahar. As far as meiser sheni is concerned, they're not even the Tama Meiser Sheni, even though there's some Kedusha in it. You can only in Yerushalayim, but they're Tama Truma. So the Rambam is going to tell you that Tful Yom and Tama Cholon Klal. If ain't a place Loichli Truma Mashke Truma, he only passes that and he makes him into a Shlishi. Another detail, guys, we learned to Shabbos that even though a Tful Yom who touches Truma makes it into a Shlishi, so you can argue he's like a Sheni. If he touches Kodesh, he doesn't make Kodesh into a Shlishi. He makes it straight into a Revi. Point is that other than Truma or Kachim, a Tful Yom cannot be Metame. Therefore, Allah Ches, and everything that we're saying now, the Rambam is giving the Klal now, and the Rambam is going to give applications in the next chapter. Don't look for an example. First, the Din. Yesh Devarim She'enam Chiber B'Tful Yom, which is the topic that we're talking about. Afal Pi, that the same scenario will be considered connected by all other tumais, and therefore, no, if A and B are not connected, yeah, A will become tummy if it's truma or if it's kachim, but B won't. But if someone else would do that, then he would be placed al-hako. And the Rambam wants to point out, which is a tumakala. And that's also someone that's only puzzle on the level of a sheni midrabanan. Then, in the cases that we'll give in the next chapter, the leniency of Einoi Chibur is only for Tful Yom and not for Tumas Geviyah. Hanei pasal hakoil. Shall I pasal Tful Yom? The Ein Sarach Leimer Shem Nagaboy Shem Hoya Nagea Ha'ava Tuma Yarishan Shumanatama hakoil. So before giving the application, there's a certain leniency by a Tful Yom that certain things, certain scenarios will not be considered Mechubarim or Chibur. Now, before giving the example, and the answer is, you know what's unique about a Tful Yom? It's not only about that it's a low level of Tumah. It's two things. First of all, this person did everything that he needs to do to become Tar. And number two, for him to become Tar, nothing else needs to be done, only the passage of time. Masha'enkin, if someone is Tameh, even only Midrabanan, I'll tell you something better, even Tumas Yodayim, all you need to do is Natilas Yodayim, doesn't matter. It's not about the low level of tum, it's that I did not do anything that needs to be done and something still needs to get done. Tful Yom, Aleph, he did, he went to the mikveh. Beis, he doesn't have to do anything other than waiting until the night. Okay. The Pnei Kfar Tar, number one, he means he did a mice of Tar. And number two, the Eina Mechusar Ella Harav Shemesh. And no, you're not Mechusar Meiser. The Oid, so that's number one. Again, it's amazing. It's very interesting to say that the Rambam didn't give example because really there are many, many examples. A lot of Perek Ches will show the contrast between certain things are not chibur, which is a kula, Tful Yom, and they're considered a chibur for everything else. And therefore, but as far as a Tful Yom is concerned, they're not tamei. The Hein Ta'od is B'Tful Yom. Guys, we speak about Truma, obviously. If it wouldn't be Truma, there's nothing to talk about. For example, Hasa'oira and a Koisemes, barley and spelt, while they are not in their natural klipa, they're not food. B'meila, even though they're Truma or Kachim, they won't become Tamei. However, Bismachim Kalufim, when they are in their shells, and other grains like chita, no difference, alpha pisha and klufa, and ketzach, which is black cumin, and sesame, right? Even though they're not in their shells, then yeah, they are considered foods. Nefsalim b'tful yoim, the ein sarach leimer, sheim istamin, v'chalatu mois. Halacha 9, Kol Yudois Ha'icholin. That was the topic yesterday, what we learned yesterday. Remember Yodayim, She'im Chibur Ba'afatuma. We don't make this leniency by saying that maybe a yad should only be a mechuber if it's coming from a high source and not from a tvul yoim. No, it's the same. If a food has been sliced, remember we learned about the cucumbers and other foods, but you didn't fully cut it, that it's considered chibur avatuma, tvul yoim. The Rambam, instead of telling you what he's talking about, he's telling you what he's not talking about. Here, they're all the same. Harehu chibur biyodayim v'gam zeh chayim b'tumas hayidayim tvul yoim. Before again giving the example, the Rambam wants to point out, just like he pointed out in Ches, that even someone who only has tumas gevia, we won't be lenient in the din that we're going to learn in the next chapter. Even someone who only has tumas yadayim, which is not only a tumah derabanan, but you can argue it's even less than the gevia, because by a gevia I'm tummy, by a sheni, but it's all of me. Tumas yadayim means all I need to do is nantilas yadayim. Yeah. Chibur. So now the big question is, what are the areas in which we have this leniency? Dafke by the tvul yoim. And now we begin with that Peirik Ches. So the Rambam is going to give many cases that we're going to say, now, the thing that had direct contact with the tvul yoim, of course, if it's truma, will become a shlishi. But that with the next, not connected, or not connected, meaning if it would be connected, don't forget, shlishi cannot make it a V. But not connected, if it would be considered one entity, then all of it would become lechatchila shlishi. Mashenkin by all other tumas. Even by tumas yadayim, we're not going to be that lenient. Kolchchen v'kaluchayim by avatuma, by other higher tumas. That's going to be part of Peirik Ches. And b'chlal, that will lead us into many more dinim of chiburei ichalin. And let's begin. Peirik Shmini has 19 halachas. Hashem will help us to finish this in time. It's not difficult, but every halacha almost has a lot of nuance to chap. And let's go through this as quick as we could. Halacha out. As quick and as well as we could. All right, chalos oikikodim. Now, what's the difference between a chalos and a kicker? That's a big discussion. Let's say right now that we are both Dovi referring to dough. Just works better. Okay? In other words, then one is a piece of a dough called a challah, like when you're mafresh challah, and the kicker means the whole bread in dough. Shekanasan, that they were gathered. I'm saying dough because noishech, to my experience, once a bread is fully baked, and the outer part is hardened, it's not noishech. It's dough. And we learned some dinim about this yesterday, but now we're going to a different topic. So they're biting into each other. And another important detail, you don't plan to keep them together. Or it's prior to the lower challah, forming this krum, forming this karmu, forming this crust. You put the challah on top. Now, the Rambam is giving this example because here, even if you didn't have explicit datoy lahafrishon, but itself understood that prior to dough in the oven being fully baked, if you're going to have something on top of it, you know what will happen? Its form will be damaged. That's why it's just another case where halacha says you're going to remove the upper one, and the nugget achas mihen. Even though we finished Peirik Vav speaking just about these cases, but not about the Tvul Yoim. If a Tvul Yoim touches, like that's a great scenario. Either right now connected, either connected prior to them becoming Tomei. That's the word. It's two different chalos. And since either Vedatoi lahafrishan or the Metzias is one which people will not leave it as is, it's considered two. Only, my friends, for Tvul Yoim, if you bubble water, and now a kuba means a cube. A cube means you have a huge bubble. What's inside a bubble? Air. So we're going to see in halacha and afkamina, little bubbles are considered liquid. Big bubbles are considered what? Nothing with nish. It's considered air, avir. Or the first time that you boil oats, or v'yain chodesh. Uva'idus, shehir sichu. All of these things, they ferment by creating large bubblach. The nagat tul yoim b'resicha, all you touch were the bubbles. So the din is ein chiber, v'lei pasal ela resicha bolvad. How great is that? Well, it's the bubble, that yeah, but nothing else on the sides, another leniency. It's considered air. What are you talking about? And let's not forget, we learned in the previous chapter, it's hashboiden. Everything is in a pot. Okay. But let's go. Even if they're noish chuzubazu, but they ain't that lahafrish. That must mean that the lower bread's outer part already began to crust. And therefore, it's not the end of the world if the top challah will stay on top. It's not going to completely crush down on it. So if you don't have explicit machshava to be mafresh, the Torah doesn't say that you're going to be mafresh. But the bubbles are not that big. It's normal bubbles, little bubbles. However you define little and big. But the second time you cooked it, the grisin, whenever you are cooking oil, then yashin mein chadash, it never creates humongous bubbles. Urasichas adashim, lentils that are bubbling, all of these things. Yes, even by full yain. Halacha base. You get the gist, guys, of the whole chapter. Let's go. Batzeik sheyatza b'shas afiyah. Meaning, when you put a bread in the oven, there will be times that the outer part of the batzeik shmuli will crack, and some of the inner dough from heat will go out. So you'll have like a little finger, a little kav going out of the batzeik. That's the case over here. The names of the it's like a nail. That's a good amount. A little strand. It's escaping the heap. It's right, get me out of here. Which can happen, especially the ends of the loaves. Sometimes you're making a very thin loaf, so the part in the middle, because of there's so much dough, it's not getting burned. The outer edges is getting burned, and that is called a chirchur. If the outer part that's burnt, if that finger, that masmet, is smaller than the width of a finger normally always means the thumb breadth, the nugget full yoim behem, it's considered part of and pasakol hakiked. If you have small granules of salt, however you define small, even though he didn't touch the bread, he only touched the salt, it's on the bread. If you have a pebble in the loaf, turmas, or the turmas, we speak about that vegetable that you have to cook 7 times. That's you have that inside the loaf. It's already something harder, or a gagram alagadol, a large granule of salt. Maybe it means, the kashrus salt, whatever they call that. Or if you have it, going back to the first case in halacha base, if you have this little masmer because of heat that cracked through, but it's thicker than a finger breadth. And here, even the avatuma, hakikar tor, it's considered something other. Okay, in other words, here in halacha base, that Rambam is writing where tvul yom is like. It's not for everything. This is either a chibur for all or not a chibur for none. Vaitem, halacha gimel, rakik, a small roll, shenechlach chetzia v'chetzia kaim, half is burnt, half is edible. Harezu eina chibur. Now, nechlach ho'emtza v'tzadon kayamim, if the middle got burned, eina chibur zelozeh, afila ba'avatuma, ve'en tzarech le'em v'tzvul yoim. Now, if I tummy touch the side to the right, guys, that side becomes tummy. The middle part is not oichel, it's burnt. So the other side is nothing. Gewaldig. Here, sometimes, by the way, I want to make something else clear. When you say in a chibur, many times in a chibur, but both parts will be tummy, because let's say if I'm an av, example, and I touch something that is the size of a kibetza, and that is connected, like here, there's then a burnt piece of the bread, and then there's another piece. If it would be mechubar, then all of it will become a rishon. Ein chibur sometimes doesn't mean the other side is not tummy. It means it's not considered part of the first. But if it would have been touching the first, then we learned in the previous segment that midrabanan oichlin rishon can make oichlin into a sheni. Don't forget that. In a chibur means it's not considered one unit.
But not here, there's not touching.
And not here, they're not touching. The way I understand, correct.
It doesn't matter who's touching.
It always matters who's touching.
I'm saying in this case, everyone would make it tummy.
No,
It would be.
That's right. This happens every time in my fridge. You have meat, you put it in the fridge, mitamal, you look at it, you can't find the meat. There's like this yellow gook all around. In other words, the gravy got hardened and it covered the meat. Now, a tful yoim, why are we saying a kodesh? Because a tful yoim, to begin with, if he were to touch the meat proper, cannot make a tummy, chulin, but it's kodesh. He'll make it into a revi if he's touching it. But he's not touching the meat. He's touching bakipa. The yamel, you understand that yellow. So the din is chatichos mutaros. Haha. Aber noga b'chaticha. But if he touches the meat, like who's subservient to who, then we say not only does the meat become tummy, all of the guk that when you lift the meat up goes with the meat is part of the meat. One direction, not both directions. Chibur.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Why is he specifying that it's gelled, like that it's congealed? What happens if it was in the liquid state? So then what would happen?
And all the liquids, ba'ashboiden, we learned in the last chapter, becomes tummy.
Okay, does that impact the meat or no? Because it's already a revi.
If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if Tful Yom can make mashkin tameim.
Right. Does it make it back to Arisha? Like the
If it would make a tamei because it's mashkin of kachin. See, it could be Danny. I think it would make it into a rishon, and then everything will become a sheni. Sheni, I think. You have to remember if Tful Yom can make mashkin tameim, but that's why it's not liquid. Liquid has other rules. Let's go right. Chein betafshil kitniyos shekarim al gabe perusa is another type that many people they have bread and they put bread. What do you call this today? French toast. That's a great example. And his example is not French toast, not eggs. He's speaking about they would use legumes, but they would use a certain veggie to cover the bread. In other words, if you touch the bread, the thing around it becomes tummy, not the other way around. Oil is floating on wine. Great example. And the Tful Yom touches the oil. Guys, we're speaking on oil of Truma. The wine is of Truma. How great is that? Now, I'm curious. That Rambam is saying that's only by the Tful Yom. That means if a guy is an abatame touches it, I think that since it's all bashboinen, it's all directly connected to the av. Okay, right. Halacha dalet. Yodak shel truma. You have a vegetable. Ubeitza trufa nusal gabav. You have a steered egg. In other words, you have the white and the egg that were connected together, and you smeared it on top of this yarok. The nugget talking about beitza. Here, like pasal ella kelach shekenegdoi. Interestingly, this egg, I take back my French toast, is considered part of the vegetable, but you are only metama the vegetable that's directly below the place that he touched. Wow. And that's only if there's no air in between it. But the imhoisa come in koiva. When you cook something, especially by eggs, it can make a hat form, which means that what you touched directly under it is not even on the vegetable. Then ain't a chibar at all. Wow. How great is that? Look at this din, guys. No, it's here you're saying, if I touch a vegetable, the whole vegetable becomes tummy. If I'm a tummy. Here, I touch the egg. So mitzad echad, we're saying, not only is that egg tamei, the vegetable underneath it, but only the part of the vegetable underneath it. Hey.
Why would that be any different than the wine and the oil?
Because it's different. It's a different case. And here we're saying...
No, but those are two substances that are mamish touching.
And here we are saying that one, very good. Here, the egg is subservient to the veggie.
The oil.
Shmuley, the egg is subservient to the vegetable. That's why it's more part of the vegetable. The oil is separate. The oil has its own mitzias. Very good. It's stiff for that. Let's go. I'm sure we can spend a lot of time. It's easy to. It's just a lot of different cases. Let's go back. You have a strand of an egg. That congealed on the wall of a frying pan, and we're speaking about the guys. The frying pan has truma, just to make sure. The food is frying pan, and the egg, like it happens when we make this, some of the egg, it adheres to the wall. So v'naga by tful yoim. Now we're speaking about some of the egg. If you crack an egg open, like many people do nowadays on the frying pan, I'm saying nowadays because when there was an issue of the blood being asur midiraisa, we had to halachically be a lot more careful. From a people, we never opened up an egg on a frying pan. You do it in a bowl and make sure there's no blood stood up. Now it's a whole different dinner because even if there's blood, it's only midrabanan, and all you need to do is remove the blood. So it's today in the bakeries here, they don't check the eggs at all, which is fine. So you're cracking the eggs on the wall of the keli. So some of this egg now is on the inside, some is on the outside. And it got a little bit fried. It's hot. So I guess if you touch minasaf olafnim, so then chibur. But if you touch minasaf olachutz, ein a chibur. How great is that? So only the part, guys, that's outside, that becomes tamei. We're speaking just about a tful yoim. And all of the egg and all of the content in is not connected. And again, let's speak about everything is truma. I'm just giving you an example. So, either it becomes a shlishi or not, finished. Similarly, that we are mechalik, that which is inside the pot, that which is on the other side of the rim. If you have a barrel and it's perforated, whether it's perforated in the bottom, whether hello, Yaakov, I need your smile over here, baby, and the tvul yoim sticks his finger in, so the wine shouldn't pour out. Guys, nifsala kula. Now, what's amazing? If you remember, what did we learn by the din of yayin nesach, my friends? That if someone who's manasech yayin sticks his finger in the hole, we had that same case. All of the wine above the hole is taki yayin nesach, but all of the wine underneath it is not. By tuma, we're more machmer. Why? Because anything that's ba'ash boinen is considered one. Like it's considered touch. The vart is, again, it's like in already. It's not outside because you're plugging it in. Halach is like, you're pouring liquids from one keli to the other, and you're touching the kiluach. Yes, we learned nitzoik. Now what happens? So we say like this. We already established that nitzoik ain't a chibur. Now, the liquid that touched your finger, becomes let's say a shlishi. We're speaking about a truma wine. Now this wine is falling into the keli underneath it. What's the din by tuma? This is important. The din by tuma is that when there is meya ve'echad, there is bito. As it's amazing. I want to add something. Don't we say that a drop of mashkin is matama no matter how much you touched? Yes. But here there's another nuance. The other nuance is that since we're speaking about something that's already only tamei, only because it's truma. Since truma's bottle be'echad b'meya, so here we apply the din of bittul. Right. So you have this boy, and he's separating truma. The nafla mimenu chavi shel truma. I'm sorry. He's separating, truma. Now he's separating it in a way where he's not touching it. Obviously, it's a tvul yaim. So he truma, guys, is 2%. So the tvul yaim, he took like this jug, he put it in there, and he removed 2%, and then it dropped into the bar. The shock of a bar, very good. Now the wine in the bar is not truma. Min hasofa ulachutz. So he's touching the yain of chulin right on the side. I'll tell you more than that. So the case that they explain here is that the jug of truma was not full until the top. When it fell back into the bar, that means that more wine from the bar, which is chulin, entered that jug. When he removed the jug, there wasn't a handle. He stuck his fingers on the rim to remove it. We want to know whether he touched the truma or whether he touched the chulin. And the leniency is, what you would argue, you're kidding? The wine is in the same jug. And therefore, if you touch the top, the chulin part, so what? It's as if you touched the bottom truma part. We don't say that. Ein a chibur. But that's only if he touched the rim and out of the rim. But min hasafa v'lefnim, even though he did not directly touch the bottom part, everything that's within the keli, very good. Chaps the edge, just like we had the egg on the other side. We don't say that he did somehow touch some of the wine that's mamish all the way on the rim, on the top. We don't say that he was matama de yayin. Now, that is if the jug fell into a boil. Jug and a boil, one is a keli, one is karka. But the imo yahabar pitos, pitos means it's huge, but it's a keli. Afilo keli but it's not mechuber lekarka. Here we say, since it's one type, kuloi chibur, and if you had in the jug some truma, my friends, and it fell the same thing, it fell back into the pitos, and you chapped it fully and grabs it and picks it up. Even from the outside, if some of that liquid is touching the liquid in the inside, it's considered as if he touched the truma. White flour, levaina, ktoides, gechalim, shenaga tvolyoim b'miktsasam. All of these items are considered like one gush, and therefore pasal eskulim. Guys, we have to go back for a second. How is Yom Kippur unique? Because during the year, when you were zoicha to remove from the mizbeach gechalim for the ketoides, you removed it with a machta shel kesef. That will not be taken inside. Then you poured from that machta into the machta of zav. On Yom Kippur, to minimize the weight of the Kohen Gadol, he ran up already with the machta. We learned it was not 4 kabim, I think it was only 3 kabim. It had a longer handle. It was easier. But that, it's when the gechalim that you removed are going to be going inside the heichal on top of the. This is not about the ketoides l'fnai v'lefnim. This is for the ketoides of the morning and the afternoon. There is where we say that all of those coals are considered one unit. But we're speaking about the first gathering of gechalim, which is done with the silver shovel. Now, what happens if those gechalim fall on the ground? Those gechalim are not considered one unit. Bechlal, there's no kedusha. In other words, they cannot become tamei because what happened with that? The whole point is that the silver shovel was bigger than the golden one. And then when they poured it over, some of it could have fallen on the ground. And a chanami. And then they would sweep it into the Alma. So don't forget, if a Tful Yoim touches it, it's not touching. Forget about one gush. B'chlal is not tamei. Now, halacha yud, mikpa shel chulen, oy rakik shel chulen. So you have this thick stew. And a rakik means a cookie prior to it being properly baked. And on it you have oil. You have the food is chulen. The shemen shel trumat saf al gabeyam. The naglayim b'shemen leipasal al hashem bilvad. Again, we have a tful yoim. Even though it's resting, it's 2 separate things. The oil becomes shlishi, and I'll tell you, the food cannot become tummy because the food is chulin. But the im chiber, if it was mixed, why? Very simple. I'll tell you something. I know that only the oil, if the cookie is very oily, doesn't matter. But in the cookie, there's oil of truma. The oil is one thing. So how can you eat it? There is in it. If it's not mixed, you remove the oil and the cookie can be eaten. Right. Yorok shel chulen, a cooked vegetable. Shebishla b'shaman shel truma. Another thing, you cooked it in oil of truma. Another big chiddush. Leipasal ella makoy magoi. Wow. And what don't you say? You don't say that the oil connected all of the vegetables in the pot. You don't say that. A big chiddush.
We just say
that's in it. That's in it. In it. In the beginning of Yud. You know, when you have a stew, it's different. No, it's the oil goes into hot oats. If the oil goes into a cookie, here it's different klachim. That's the difference. Halacha Yud Beis, hamikvah shel truma. Now the stew is made out of truma, And now you have garlic and oil of chulin. Why? I'll tell you why. Because since the garlic and the oil, Shmuley, it's the same logic. They are here to make the stew tastier. So they're considered part of the stew. So now we say it's as if you touch the stew. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hamikvah shel chulin, the opposite direction, and the shum and the oil are truma, and the tefillim touched some of the shum and shemen, the miksasan, loy pasal ela makai magoy. Wow, loy pasal. See, everything is different. So this is mikvah. So I am kibates kol makom Hashem pasal. It must be that it's not kibates. And I can tell you more. That means if I touch the shum, not all the shums become. Not all of the garlics become tummy. Only the place that was directly in touch with me. When do we say it's the ikid is the shum? Then everything is considered connected. When do we say the ikid is the stew? What's the roiv? And then if the shum is meruba, I touched any part of the garlic in it, all of the garlic is tummy. The mikvah won't be tummy, but the garlic in it will become tummy. The mikvah is chulin. But if you have garlic that's spread out in a keli where you crushed it and you touch some of it, why? Because whenever you have garlic in this pestle, you don't want for it to be connected. You don't want it to be a single entity, right? When you have crushed garlic, you want to be able to stick your fingers in there and take some and put here and take some and put there. So, the din of keli with stadet is not said over here when you don't want them to be combined. All other spices that are going to be crushed, like shum bashemen, if you crush them, not b'mashkin, and you gather them, as we learned yesterday, and the words are chibur, adam, einer chibur l'chol davar. If they are in oil, the oil connects them. If it's something that's normally mixed with oil and they're not in oil and you don't want them to be connected, then even though they are in the same keli, so you have a dough and you did not do the physical separation, but you declared from where you will be separating the dough. Now, once you make that separation, that dough is truma, or v'chein hakishus, if you have a zucchini, a large vegetable, and you declare that you're going to be removing the portion of truma from the tzafin of it, from the bottom of it. Now, harei zechibur, and therefore v'imnagat vol yoyim b'mektsasa ha'isa, then nifsala hachala, but nitla chalasa mitoicha, chazara letoicha, and then you touch the edge of the challah, then that challah becomes tamei, but the dough is not tamei. Ein a chibur. Interesting. In other words, here we're going to say in the first case that the entire dough will become tamei. The dough is chulin, because you never separated the truma from it. You just declared where it is. So it's considered one entity. So all of it becomes tamei. Halacha tezva isa shenidamam. You have a dough. The dough became damai because truma got mixed in it and you didn't have the ratio of 1 in 100. So all of it has to be treated like truma. Oy shenes chamsa. It was made the leavened by using Sarshal Truma. No point, it's not bottle. Then Eina Nefselas B'Tful Yoim. How great is that? But as far as who can eat it, only Kohanim can eat it. Because it's Damai. It's not considered Truma, Ledine, Tuma, and don't forget, a Tful Yoim can only be Metama, Truma, or Kachin. It's not Tami. Wow. No, it's in Halacha Yudalid. The Tful Yoim touched the edge, the Tzafain, that was only the Challah. That is Truma. But if it's mixed in, even though it's not batal midinei achila, it's batal for dinei tumah. Halacha tazayin. Isa shehuchsheru b'machshen. We're speaking about flour. The flour prior, the grains were made wet. But now you made a dough b'mei peiros. The naga bat full yoim lepasal ella mokim magoy bolvad. We learned that chibur that's made through mei peiros is not called a chibur. It's great, and therefore the other portions are not considered connected. Now the question mark that I'll leave open over here is that we learned about this in Perek Vav. When we learned it in Perek Vav, I have to look back. I don't think that Rambam mentioned there the word full yoim. I think we mama spoke this out. We spoke it out. If mashkin cannot be machsher, it must be they became muchsher. And now you made a dough out of mei peiros. It's not called a chibur. If it's not called a chibur, then even if an avatome touches it, only that part. The Rambam is not saying it. The Rambam is saying that leniency, that mashkin, mei peiros is not machaber, a dough that's only for tful yoim. Okay, halacha yud zayin. Meiser rishon that did not yet have meiser min hameiser removed, and it became muchshar. The noga by tful yoim, or someone who has yodai misoy avoy sheni. Now, can I be metame if I'm only a tame on this level? Can I be metame chulin? No, I cannot. And by the way, meiser rishon, we paskin, so machlekes tanoim has no kedusha, even though it has to be given to the Levi or to the Kohen. He can share it with the Yisrael. It's not shaykh, but you still have to remove trumas meiser. So what would you say? One could have said, since you're going to remove trumas meiser, so it's a subtle, so it's not mafrish memenu truma. Trumas meiser betani remains tar. Obviously, the separator is not the tvul yoim. B'pnei shem meiser ishim kachulin. And with tvul yoim, yidayim es avos enim psolim ela es achulin. Shashlishi b'achulin tar k'masher b'yarnu. Not like Rabbi Akiva. Even though in there's going to be meiser min ha-meiser removed prior to it being removed, that it's not true. Chein or isha she tvulas yoim. And she's lost us itzam. And now challah, guys, challah has a din of truma. And because challah, what should she do? The Rambam gives a gaval the ke'etzam. Think, what are you going to do? If the moment you declare it challah, you're going to make it tummy. Now, if you're quite ashamed, you ruined everything. But you know what you do is, let's say today challah, whatever the amount is, right? There's no shiurim right now, chutzlaretz. You remove whatever will be challah. You don't declare it challah, and you put it in a keli. Mafrisha manichasa b'keli. And v'noisantoi im sha'ara isaka achas u'makefas alakol kedei l'kim minamukaf. Minamukaf means that when you separate challah lechatchila, you want everything to be together. You bring it near, but it's already separated. It's minamukaf, but you didn't declare it to be challah. And then all you need to do is say it's a challah. And no, it's the fact that the isa did not yet have challah removed. Meiser rishon that doesn't yet have meiser min ha-meiser removed is not a problem. It only becomes susceptible to tumah v'tful yoim after it's tumah meiser, after it's challah. Separate it physically, put it in a keli. I'll tell you more. If she puts it in a clay oven, then she can even move it later. But even if she cannot move the keli, say that she shouldn't touch it. We should tikra l'shem, but I take a bah. By the way, she can touch a keli. She just can't touch the dough. Shaloi tips the lead, and that's the same thing she does. She tvulas yoim. In other words, the keli itself is a tvulas yoim. Great scenario. How can you leave truma in that keli when the moment you say it's truma, the keli will be matamid? Say that. Put it into another keli. That's taught. Have that other keli near, right there, mukaf, and then declare that it's truma. Halacha yutches log in shu tful yoim. If you have bottles that again they were tummy, there's a tful yoim shemilohu mechavius meiser. You put the login into barrels. The barrels are meiser again, prior to meiser min ha-meiser. And and you say, trumas meiser al masha b'chavis achash techshach. This is such a great case. No, what's here? The problem is, I don't care when you declared it to be. If it's in a keli that's a tful yoim, the moment you declare this to be trumas meiser, it will now become tummy. But like we mentioned, what's the mile of a tful yoim? Nothing needs to happen other than time going by. I'm allowed to make a separation now and make a declaration now, but my declaration is that the contents here will only become meiser min ha-meiser after it gets dark. After it's dark, the keli is automatically not a tful yoim. I don't even have to declare. I can separate it now, make the declaration now, say it should be chal only achash techach, and you're good. Hadei zu truma tahira. Lefisha eina nases trumas meiser. it's your declaration is effective, and it's not only going to become that and after shetachshach, out of shimsha you shall again, and automatically the yitar. Now, but guys, don't forget it goes two ways. If my tanai is effective, then if the barrel broke before it got dark, you know how Maisa Mena Maisa works, Shmuli? I have to have the other 90%, and now this 10% is from 100. 10 is what happens if I'm saying it's going to happen later. 1 second. If by the later time the original broke, how can that become Maisa Mena Maisa from what? So therefore, login betivli. If it's not Maisa Mena Maisa, so then what's inside now this jug? No one can have it. Not the Levi, not the Kohen, because it's tevel concerning Maisa Mena Maisa. Or same thing, if the login broke, then the chavius was not tithed for. So I know it's beautiful that you have the option of saying this will be Maisa Mena Maisa tonight. Very nice. You resolved the Tuma issue if it's in a keli of a tful yoim. But if anything goes wrong prior to night, then you got a problem. Benegea hilcha is trumas. Okay. Final halacha. Halacha yutes tful yoim mitumas meis. Now, when you speak about a tful yoim, we didn't speak about this right now, but let's review. A tful yoim can be I touched the shedets and I went to the mikvah right away. I'm talking about tful yoim. If someone is tamei meis, they're only called tful yoim on the 7th day. Okay, and the Rambam wants to point out that the din of a tful yoim with the leniencies, like we learned in this chapter, that for many things, it doesn't matter from what you are a tful yoim. We don't say that we're only lenient if you're coming off a tumakala. No, tful yoim and tumas meis, or if God forbid someone was boil nida. Such a person is called a tful yoim, and therefore such a person oisa bebeis habad. They are allowed to work in a beis habad. What's pshat? That oil, chulin, guys, chulin cannot become a shlishi, can only become a sheni. So we don't say that a tful yoim from a tuma chamura has a higher level of tuma. If it would be like a rishon, then he cannot touch oil. He could touch oil. Anyone, oisin betaros. Chutz means, but there's an exception, and that's not because of the din of a tful yoim. Guys, on the last day of your tuma after the mikvah, when there's nothing else to be done, you're called a tful yoim. But the zav, remember, if the zav who goes to the mikvah by day, or zav gedoyla midin toira, not the way women do it now, they go to the mikvah during the day. And we noch learned that if they had a relation with their husbands, which they shouldn't, but you can't say they did a sin. Wait and see. It's a wait and see. Because if they will not see new dam on that day, they became tar from when they went to the mikvah. But if they're going to see dam, if the zav on the 7th day who went to the Mayim Chaim after the mikvah, if he sees another the zav, it's soiset all of the shinas nakim. So it's retroactive. So Eitz HaTorah Kamashmalan don't have this guy do taharas because it might turn out that he's not a tful yoim. It might turn out that he's an av. Chutz mizav izav bashri shalem she'af pi that they went to the mikveh, and yes, and they are just the max that they can do is be matama truma and kachim, but lo ya'asu b'beis habar of chulin. Don't touch foods that are in the state of tara, because shema yiru, and then the nimsulem afreya, as we learned, sharei soiser makoil k'moy shemi arnu mamash moededik, and now we are going to start today's 9th chapter. We're going to learn about liquids that are tamei. When do they transfer tuma to solid foods and when not? I'll tell you even better. When you have tummy liquids that became solids, does the status of tuma change? Or if something that is tummy as a solid and now it gets liquefied, does that change the status of the tuma or not? Perek Shi has 11 halachas beginning with halacha aleph. L'chaim, Gavaldi. Allah mashkin. The Rambam is not talking about mashkin. Guys, mashkin, what the Hasidim called mashkin, b'chlal cannot become tummy. It's like a mikveh. Think about that. Hashemen, wine for the hoicha fenster. Wine can become tummy. Good. Hashemen, oyad dvash nitlu. If shemen and dvash became tummy, And then they became karshu. They coagulated. They became a solid. And then they were dissolved. No, it's one might think that when it changes its form, even if you're going to say that the new food touched the old, but it might be 1 degree less. And then when it goes again, and like here, maybe you would say the liquids is a rishon. Maybe it became a solid, became a food. So the foods are sheni. And now it became a liquid again. We say, the point that Rambam wants to make is that shemen and devash, even when they become hard, they always remain with some moisture. So our concept cannot be applied to this example. It's always mashkin. Which you might have thought will change, as we'll see in a moment. That is not shemen or devash never become solid halachically. Now, halacha beis, roitev, sauce, hagirisin, oatmeal, hecholav, milk, when they solidify, they halachically now are considered solids. Or let me use the words, mashkin and oichlin. And we keep on noticing, b'chlal, that the tum of mashkin is more chamur than tumas oichlin. Now it becomes oichlin. And not only that, in the examples that we gave, we learned in the beginning, is that when it comes to oichlin, either it's by default miyuchad l'maychel adam, but certain foods are like in between, and it needs to have machshava. Now, your machshava won't be batal, but you had machshava. Okay, someone decided to eat it. Just make it clear. It's chalav shekarshu without machshava is not oichlin, not mashkin. Just make that clear. But someone intended to eat it. Now, and you began with a product that's not tummy. Te'im naga bohen oichel rishon. Oy mashke. If oichel, that's tummy on the level of a rishon. Or mashke, that's always midrabanan tummy when it touches these hardened milk, they become shniyim. Kedin, my friends, midrabanan, oichlin and mashkin tameim, midrabanan are metame oicholin. Now, ho yobehem mashkin tefeach, but if this milk, I'll just take for one example, even though it got congealed, but there is still enough moisture in it, that if you were to touch it, your hands will get moist. And then if you touch the table will get moist. Then it remains like mashkin. I'll tell you, because midrabanan, my friends, mashkin always are tchila. So it's huge. If it's going to be considered a cholin, it's tummy on the level of a sheni. If there's enough moisture that it is toifeyach, then it remains mashkin, and therefore it's tummy on the level of a rishon. Now let's go another scenario. If the milk became tummy when it was milk, and now the kafu achar came a karshu, now it became congealed without liquid teifeyach, and we just said that it's considered oichlin. So you know what? The status of the tumah changes. Now it becomes sheniyim. Why? Because it's like a panum chadashis. Now the liquids touched it, but the shkoyach liquids, the rishon that touches food, it makes the food into a sheni. In other words, the tumah rishona goes away. That's the point. When the mashkin turns into solids, contact, yes, but the original is not here. Now, nitmuk shem kfuyim, let's go. They became tummy when they were solids, like we mentioned. So what are they? They're sheni. And now, now they dissolved in masu mashkin. Now, when can liquids impart tumah to mashkin? You have to have a kabetza. Now, on the other hand, if there was a kabetza and it was matama the mashkin, what level will the mashkin have? Even though the foods are a sheni, the mashkin will become a rishon. So like this. When it was in a solid state, you had exactly an egg. This will be the call of the whole chapter. When it begins to dissolve, that means you have to have at least 1 drop of mashkin. If you begin with an excise, if it dissolved for there to be now food and mashkin, that means you have a drop less than a kabetza. If you have a drop less than a kabetza, even though the foods are tamei, how can it be a time of mashkin? Once there is mashkin, you don't have the kabetza. So the mashkin is tohidin. If you begin with an egg and a drop of food, which means that when it began to dissolve, there was a moment where there was 1 tip of mashkin and a kabetza. You know what's going to happen? Tell you what's going to happen. The oichlin, which is a sheni, is going to be metama the mashkin. We learned the klal, the mashkin becomes a rishon. So now you have a drop of mashkin rishon. As the rest continues to dissolve, that drop of mashkin rishon is touching more mashkin, and all of it at the end will be rishon. That's it. Beautiful. So if you only have a kabetza mechuvan, avada, if there's less, but even if you but a mechuvan, harei mashkin completely tohayden, as we explained, because the moment there is mashkin, you don't have a kabetza. Oh, you used to be kabetza. Gavaldik. Now all the mashkin are tameim. Why? Because kish and in the moment you had the beginning of the congealing nitmeis, that drop became tummy because there was still a kabetza oichel left. And now that drop will continuously be metama kol hamashkin shenemeichu achareha. How gavaldik? A person is tummy on the level of a tamei maze. He's a person who's an av. Which means, what did they become, my friends? That liquid became a rishon, not midrabanan. It became a rishon midoraisa. I'm sorry, the zaysim became a rishon. Now I want to know whether the oil that left the zaysim are going to become tummy. No, they won't, because if all of the food together is only a kabetza, that means that the moment I extracted liquid from them, the food part became a drop less than the kabetza. So yeah, the food is tummy as a rishon midoraisa. How can it be metama mashkin when you have the rule that we learned yesterday that oichlan only in the shir of a kabetza is able to be metame? Now, if this tamei mace touches the mashkin, that's a whole different din. Avade, then the mashkin become tameim because it had direct contact with the adam. Because shahamashke kimefukad ba'oichel uchilu guf acher. Halacha says, think about this idea that liquids like wine comes from the grapes, oil comes from the olives. Prior to squeezing it out, we don't consider for there to be wine right now. Right now it's grape. When you squeeze the grape, now you are making something new. So even though the grape, we don't say if the grape is tamei, who needs the kabetza? I'll tell you more. The grape is tamei as a rishon. Of course, the mashkin is tamei as a rishon because it's part of the grape. It's not part of the grape. The liquids in the grape and in the olive are considered something else. And it only came into the world after you began to squeeze it. And if you began with the minimum share of a kabetza, the moment you squeeze it, you don't have a kabetza. You don't have enough to impart tumah. Beautiful. But if you began with a drop more than the kabetza, yes. Because now you have a moment where there's a drop of wine, there's a drop of grape juice, whatever you want to call it, a drop of oil, and you have a beitza of olives that are tamei. And now, as you continuously squeeze it out, all the other mashkins are having contact with the first drop. And like we said by mashkin, it all becomes a rishon. What's the chiddush over here? That they impart to me even by moving. You don't need the kabetza. Then even if the zav squeezed one little gargad yechidi, that even shaloi huksha, which means that he squeezed the grape did not become tummy itself. And he did not touch the mashka. Doesn't make a difference. The mashka will become tummy. And by the way, then the grapes will become tummy. On a level of a sheni. Shekiven sheyatza stipa rishayna. Nitmeis b'masa hazov. Shehazov shenaso yichol in a mashkin tameim kol shemiyanu. Or if you have a zav that's milking a goat, so automatically the milk is tummy. Not because he's touching the milk. You can milk an animal without touching the liquid, but you're moving it. That's called halachically carrying it. Shekiven sheyatza stipa rishayna. Nitmeis b'masa hazov. Halacha gimel. Kedeiram that's filled with kivashim shel chulin. It's filled with vegetables. You're not cooking in the pot, but you're pickling in the spot. And the yotzu aleim chutz lekadeiram. Aleim, guys, aleim doesn't mean on them. It's a play of words. Allah means also a leaf. So there are contents in the pot, and some of the leaves that you left in the pot is now extending beyond the pot. And someone who's tummy on the level of an av or an rishon touched, but not that which is in the pot, only on the leaf, ba'allah or ba'alem, shechutz l'kadeira. And another detail, where it's dry there was the leaf that he touched is dry. Even though it's not only midin yad, even if that Allah has on it the amount of a kibetza. And guys, even though the leaf is tamei, it's amazing. Hakoil tar, wow. Because halachically, in this case, we're looking at combined chibur, back to chibur. When you have a leaf that's extending beyond the pot, halachically, it's considered separated. Will that leaf become tummy? Yeah. Beautiful. Like we had a little bit in the last chapter of the egg that's on the other side of the pot. Now, the moment that leaf, if it was schlepped back into the pot, now, now, let me tell you what happens. I don't care what level the leaf is. Doesn't matter. The liquids always become a rishon. You know what happens now? If even the pot becomes tamei because of the mashkin, that it makes akdeira and everything that's in it. Now, let's go to a bit more chamor. Noga ba'oleh shechutz l'deira. Everything we mentioned is if you touch the part outside the pot was dry. If the leaf that's outside the pot now, oh, your boy mashke was moist. If ba'oleh has a kebetzam, hakol tamei. Let's go through why. Because sheha'oleh, that is tamei. We said regardless. Now that it has the size of a kibetza, what will happen? It has enough to be matame, the liquid that's on it. Now, the liquid that's on the leaf is, you're right, outside the pot. But that liquid is touching the liquids inside the pot. Gewalt. Solids are considered separated, not the liquids. And also, matame sakadeda. Now we're moving on. You have pickled items that are trumam and v'niroisa tful. And now the guy, this tful was so careful not to touch anything. But now the tful finds liquid on his body, on his hands. So what's the issue? Do we say safek min hakadei nitzu? Did the mashkin come from the pot? Or safek shakelach noga biyodoi? And if that were to happen, then he actually touched. And even though we touched the vegetable that's outside the pot, we just said the liquids combine it. So now there's a doubt. So it's a gavaldik. What do we do with the doubt? Hayara pasul vakadeda tohira. Wow, my friends, how can the kadeda be tohira? You have to. It doesn't make sense. I'll tell you why it makes sense. Because when we learned about the chumrah, that liquids can be matama kalim. Remember, we learned it must begin. It doesn't go to a tful yoin. It does not go to a tful yoin. Mashkin that became tamei from a tful yoin are not matama kalim. Gavaldik. You have to remember that halach. Halach dal. Tamei shoy oichl anavim muksharim. Someone who's tamei is eating grapes that are susceptible to becoming tamei. In other words, the grapes are becoming tamei while you're eating them. And one grapeola fell back into the wine press. Okay. In the wine press, you have grapes that are going to be pressed, which means that those grapes are muksher to becoming tamei. Im hoya shalem v'loy nishmat mimenu uksoi. If the grape that fell back in is complete, and even the stem is still stuck in it, what does that mean? No liquids of the grape is oozing out, even though the grape is tamei, but you don't have the size of a kibetza, so it's not able to impart to us. So the entire gas is tahar because it touched something tamei, not on the size of a kibetza. But if the grape that fell back in no longer has, guys, halkot no longer has the stem. So what's likely when you're eating grapes without a stem? Some of the grapes that were pressed, the liquids will ooze out. Which means that the anavim inside the wine press are muksher because you wanted them to be wet. Now what do we say? We say that this guy, when you're eating grapes, you touched all of the grape. You touched the liquid. Liquid can be matama b'kolshu. Amazing. So nitma hagas betipas mashke sheberoish agargar b'makam ha'oiketz. So in other words, all of the conditions I met, you were matama mashkin. Mashkin is falling into the wine press. All of the grapes in there are muksher to be mekabel tuma. Now, naflu mimenu anavim. If grapes will fall from the hand of this tamei, now we're not speaking about a wine press. I'm eating grapes, and the grapes that fell from my hand are on the ground, and I'm trampling it over there. I'm making it into juice. There are no other grapes there. So now, a tummy person is matama through touch. Here, he's not touching it. Now, the grapes are tamei, but they're not gathered together. If they're not gathered together, you don't have a kabetza. If you began with a kabetza, which means the moment you began trampling it, you have less than the kabetza. If you began with yotze mikabetza, then I use them tamei because now you have a kabetza and you have a tipa, and therefore it's matama that drop. And as you continuously add to the drops of wine, the first tamei drop is touching all of the subsequent tamei drops. Umetameis eskol amashke hayoytze achareho. Mamash moededik. Weiter aloche hey gush al zeisim. If you have a mound of impure olives that are tamei, and they are mekubats umechubar, right? They're collected, right, and therefore they're considered halachically, as we learned yesterday, to be mechubar. And vishlich letechatana b'husak, and now you throw this into an oven, and then you heat it up the oven. If you only began with a kabetza, then we say atanur tahar. Why? Why? Number one, oichlin are never matama kelim. Hamashkin ayotze mehen are tahar, because if you only began with a kabetza, the moment you have mashkin, now you have less than the kabetza, so the mashkin are pure. Hoya hagush yoyse mikabetza mitzvah tanur. When you put this mound in the oven and you heat it up, naturally some liquid will come out of the olives, because shekesh yotze tipa achas, then nitmeis bikabetza, and now you have liquids. Liquids are matame. V'tima satanor lefikach im hazeisim atmeim are perudim ve'enam gush. If they are a gush, then you have to worry about that shaykh to have a kabetza. But if they are separated, no olive in itself has the size of a kabetza, then the tanur is tahar. It's very simple because of the rule, because kazayas amount of a cholim tameim cannot be matama kelim, and the mashkin never became tamei. Halacha vav. If you have a wood, mashkin tameim, they have in it absorbed, let's say, water, and you're using these. Vihisiku, you want to fuel your oven. Are these the best woods to fuel your oven? Mistama not. But the question is, do we say that the liquids were put in the oven? Liquids are matama akeli, or do we say that if water is inside firewood, it's now halachically wood? And we say the latter, hatanur tor, because the liquids are batal be'etzim. Even if the person dafke wanted for the wood to get wet, maybe because when wood is wet, it doesn't get burnt up as quick as. In other words, you wanted it to be that way. You are giving chashivos to the liquids. It's in the wood, it's bottled. They seek an atanatar. The ein hamayim shalem estamim and amashkim loy mehem. Wow. Again, I think that when you put it in the oven, some liquid will come out of the wood. That's what happens. You see it bubbling up. Now that it's out of the wood, maybe that becomes tummy. It doesn't become tummy. The law yasikim elabidayim tohoides. However, the hands that you are using to hold on to the wood should be a daim tohoides. Why? Because gezeidah shelo yasikim hatamei. And if I'm tamei and the woods are saturated with water, then there's going to be maybe some mayim at some point out of the wood that the tamei, are touching. So by the way, when you have olives, it's good to know that prior to putting the olives under the press, remember we learned first they would soak it together. Another step would be they would grind it. That's the case here. So the zaysim that are in the rechayim, you find in it the sheretz. At that point, the zaysim are not considered one gush, So therefore, and And I'll tell you more than that. What happens? Then you don't have a kabetza. If you don't have a kabetza, then you cannot impart further. It stops there right away. It means you don't even say that the sheretz is a av, which it is. So the zayis that's touching the sheretz is a rishon, which it is. You don't even say that the neighboring zayis is a sheni. It's not. Oichel can be metama oichel midrabana, even chulin as a sheni. But you need to have a kabetza. The zaysim and the rechaim are not considered one unit. Now, but if it's flowing with liquid, then everything becomes tamei. Why? Because shekivan shenitma mixas mashke. Now, this mashkin is touching. We learned earlier that in Teidik Zion, the mashkin is touching a kabetza at the same time. It's sitting. It's ashboiden. So the mashkin becomes tamei. And now, v'nitma kuloi. V'Hashem metames kol hazeisim. Now, nimsa al gabe ha'olin l'mayla min hazeisim. If this sheretzel you find not on top of a olive, but on top of a leaf. So now you have to ask and you trust the Badadin, even if they were Amaratzim, that were toivel, not to be Matama everything, but they have Namanos. Always the Amaratzim, it wasn't known Amanas because they're not saying the truth. It's important to remember that it's that they were not knocked with. But here you ask them, Im Amru, that we did not touch the sheretz, which means that what? Because Adam, if the workers became tamei as a rishon, they are tamei, then all of the olives that they touch will become tamei. But if they say lo nagano means we didn't touch the sheretz, then we believe them. We learned, guys, that an Amaretz is not neman ala taharis. Guys, remember this. An Amaretz is not neman for his own taharis. But ein adam chayta v'loy loy. If he's working for you, a person would not lie. We believe him. Nimsa al oim shel zeitzim, but if you have this mass of olives, and we keep on learning that a mass of olives is considered one gush, so if the sheretz is on that oim, then then everything becomes tummy. If the sheretz is found on a separate olive, and in other words, there's little mounds of olives, and you have a mound that's the size of an egg. Hakol tummy. And now the mashkin matama sharazes. If you have separate olives piled on other separate olives, it's not a mound. It's not cooked together. And the mashkin milmata afapishanar gamikabetzam. Ein tummy elamaka magoi. In other words, we don't say that the pirur had if the little group is not touching the mashke, then you're good. Then you're good. Halacha ches. Am ha'aretz. It's not called mechuber. Am ha'aretz shohay shel yad legatz. And he touched one of the eshkolos of grapes. So we say eshkol, that cluster, and all of the clusters around it are tameim, and the entire gas is tohirin. All right? Anavim, in the gas, unlike olives are considered one guk. And in the gas, the grapes are not considered connected. Remember that, guys. Olives has a din of a gush. Grapes don't. Halacha 9. Hagefes, v'hazogim. These are the remains after you press the grapes. You have the peels, you have the seeds, and everything so far was done b'tara. And now a person that's tummy walked on it, and more liquids came out. So you should know the following, that we're speaking about a scenario that these things were fully trampled. All of the liquids that are meant to come out came out already. And atkan everything. Now what happens is that at the end, if you don't gather all of the liquid, some of those liquids gets reabsorbed in the product. And now if you step on it, it goes out. But they were already out before. And no one touched those liquids. That's the key here. So the din is because sin now that's a rule, guys. The rule is that when you want to create oil and wine, if the tramplers are tameim, the liquids are tameim. Masha'inkin over here, you can even argue these liquids were already out. I know that you are taking it out again, but halachically, it's not called you're making mashkin, but it's saying haba'alim, and therefore it remains solid. Halacha yud, habadodim. workers of an olive press. That shenachlas from the yoitz, coming and the going. Umashkin to me metech beis abad. And what's the problem? Guys, people do not walk with shoes. Imagine you're walking in and out of an olive press. You know what's going to happen sooner or later? Under your fisalach, you're going to have a whole layer of oil. So I guess, im yesh bein hamashkin luvzeitz kadeshi nagvaraglein ba'aretz. If whatever oil is on your ground, by the time you get to the olives, that oil can get fully kinuached up, smeared up, cleaned up on the ground. First of all, the people, the badodim themselves, don't become tummy. They might have been touching mashkin tameim. They didn't touch it with their hands. Gavaldik. In other words, the issue here is that there might be oil that's tummy. You don't worry about that if normally by the time you get to the olives, there will be no oil on your feet. The person doesn't become tummy even if they have contact with oil. That's tummy. The person, because it's only the time through your dayim and not through your feet. Kikres HaKodesh. Shoibem gumais, if you have breads of kachin, but they have like these bowls, they're like bowly, so you can put liquid in it. Ubetoicha gumais yad mashkin of kodesh. The noga hasheretz va'achas mehen, and the noga, one loaf is touching the other loaf. The second is touching the third. Because we say shahamashke shebagumais v'chibas hakodesh hareyem kulam kemashkin. It's amazing. In other words, we don't say that, guys, every bread, the liquid in the bread, the shemen is not touching each other. The breads are touching each other. Here, halachically, it's as if all of the shemen is touching each other. This is a big chumrah consider for liquids. Aval, that's only by kodesh. If you have the same scenario, but you only have truma, that's it. And from shlishi v'alator, they're not considered mechuber. Now one touches the other. Say that. So the truma gets weaker and weaker. But if the liquid is mamish all over the loaves, then everything becomes tummy because then all the liquids are connected. We're speaking about the kikrois, guys, not the mashkin. The breads are shniyos because mashkin is a rishoin. Right? Tchila. Chutz min ha-rishoin eshreng v'asheretz. Shehi rishoin or mashkin rishoin makes Michael sheni. Final halacha Yud Aleph. It's getting late. It's a very easy halacha. Guys, whoever has a picture, Kevin is not here. With the picture, you can get it very easy. We're learning here about a utensil, a jug, that has in one of the walls a bubble. I don't know if you guys can see this.
A bubble.
A bubble, and in there's like a clay kibble, but that bubble in the wall has a hole both to the outside and to the inside. So now, a babua that is made inside the thickness of the chavis, and halachically, it's as if there is a keli acher b'tzido. And now let's chop what's going on over here. If there's an opening from this little bubble to the inside, and oichet the nikav nekev acher chutz lezeh. Very good, thank you. Wow, that's amazing. So guys, now you have to know the height of the holes. You know why the height of the holes will be important. I want to know whether if you put liquid in the inner keli, whether it's going to flow out. All right. Now, if the holes are aligned, like in the picture, the one to the left, even though it's going to leave, but it's not on an incline, or even better. Now, this scenario is no picture, but you can just, whatever you see to the right, flip the holes. Or the neck of apnimi, the inner hole is lower, the outer hole is higher, the opposite direction of the picture to the right. And everything is filled with liquid. And you don't have access to the inside. He stuck his finger in the hole on the outside. Then the din is nitmukal mashkin shemachaviyas. Why? Because the mashkin in the keli shmuli is considered mechubar to the mashkin in the jug. It's one mashkin. Oh yeah, chaviyas mekabasham pasul. Even if the jug is going to be covered and it's put in oil amaze, it's not protected because the whole of the ababua is not covered. Now, if the inner hole was milmaila, that's the picture to the right, and the outer hole is milmata, also harezu einon etzelos was on plus. However, im naga ba'avatuma ba'ababua, in the case of the picture to the right, if an avatuma touched the liquid that's in the hole of that ababua, Why? Because it's considered separated. Why is it considered separated? Because since the inner hole is higher, the level of the liquids in the bubble, the level of the liquids of the bubble will sink below the inner hole, and it cannot go in. So b'meila, it's considered. Now the chiddush here is that you would think, who cares if I touch the mashkin in the bubble? What does that mashkin become? It becomes a rishon. But the mashkin is touching the other mashkin. We don't say it's as if it's connecting. It's a big chiddush, a big leniency, and therefore the mashkin in there remains to hide in mazel tov to be continued.